Hi, and in this video we look at significance testing in MRDCL. You'll find the files used in this video in the folder tab 02. Now, one thing to say about this script, first of all, this has been computer generated, this script, so it's not necessarily an ideal script to learn from. It really is just being used for the purposes of teaching you how to use significance testing correctly in MRDCL. And to do that, I'm going to go down to a banner that we have set up. So let's go down to that. And I'm going to draw your attention to a banner called Banner 1, which is picking up various things such as Gender 1, Gender 2, grouping region together in different ways, and putting the answers as question 12a. Now, what you will notice is that the headings here are significant in this particular case. There's a backslash denoting that genders are heading here, and male is followed by the letter A. Now, what that means is that that's the letter to be used on output to indicate significant differences, and we'll come back to that in a little bit later. And then each item in this variable has to have a different letter. So you can use A, B, C, D, E, F, G, up to K. You can use, therefore, up to 26 different characters. If you're testing for two different levels of significance, which is quite a common thing to do, that's the most you can do, 26, because MRDCL will use the uppercase of these letters to indicate the higher value and lowercase to indicate the lower value. However, if you're only testing one value, you can get 52 by using lowercase a to z and uppercase a to z, and in fact you can increase it slightly beyond that because you can use special characters on the keyboard, like perhaps the $sign, percentage, to make that probably just over 60 different tests that you can do in one variable. But that's the most that you can do. So banner 1 here looks like any other variable, except the text for it have got letters in brackets. And now we come down to the table that's going to use that particular variable as a banner. So there is a table with banner 1, and I've got table 1 here analysing by Q12A as the rows and banner 1 as my columns. Now, to make significance testing happen, you have to set some format options. And the first one that you will usually set is SHGs. Now, SHG1 means I want to do my significance testing within each banner heading. So if we go back to banner 1, that would mean we want to test gender. We're going to compare males and females. Within region, that heading there, we're going to compare central, north, and north central by each other. And then in Q12, we're going to compare important, neither, unimportant, and very unimportant as comparators for the significance testing. Now, if we chose another option here, we'll look at SHG 0 in a minute. SHG -1 would test every single column by every single column. So that would test all the genders by all the ages, by all the regions, and anything else you've got in your banner by everything. And that's quite a dangerous thing to do, actually, because strictly with significance testing, it's better to test discrete samples rather than overlapping samples. So if you compared regions by the genders, some of the people who are in those genders will be in some of those regions as well. So you're not strictly comparing discrete samples. You're comparing people who are going to appear perhaps in the central region and in the male category. Next setting option is SIG1. If you set it to SIG0, that's the default. That will mean you don't want any significance testing, so that would be defeating the purpose of the whole thing if you set it to 1. SIG2 calculates a special significance testing, which is available with our special documentation. Typically, you'll use SIG1. SLA is going to set the lower figure for significance testing, so we're going to test at 80% significant. And SLB will set the higher limit, so that's going to be 90% significant. And you can set these to any value between literally 0 and 100. You can set it to 101, which means you don't want any significance testing, Or you could set them to the same value so it only does one significance test, and that's when you can use upper and lower case letters to differentiate between columns in your table. So let's run this now, just have a look at this, and then we'll look at some changes that we can do. Here's our table, and what this is telling us is that if we look at the data here, we can see we've got significant differences in this column here. So that's a capital A, so that's greater than 90% or greater, significantly different from that column. And here we've got capital EF, so that's saying that this region is significantly different than 90% or more than columns E and F. Whereas this one here is a lowercase e, so it's only significant at 80% or above. So that's putting out letters here to indicate significance. I can't see any significant differences in the far columns. There is a minimum base, by the way, that significance tests work on, and that is set by default at 30, although you can raise that or reduce that. We just recommend that you don't reduce it too far because you will start to get slightly meaningless data. So that's our significance test working with SHG set to 1. Let's look at it again now. If we change that to SHG -1, now that will test at the individual column level and test everything with everything. So now it's telling me that this particular figure here, let's take this one, that is significantly different from the males because there's an A here. E is significantly different from the central, and a lowercase f means at the lower value of 80% it's significantly different from south. So it's doing significance tests for us at different, showing us different significance differences at higher and lower levels for that particular cell in the table, and it's comparing it with all columns there to show the significant difference with each column one by one. Now you do have other settings for SHG. You can set it to 0 as well. If we set it to 0, all that we get in our output are stars, where 1 star will tell us that it's significant at the lower figure and 2 stars at the higher. It's worth saying as well that you do by default get a footnote telling you exactly what is being tested, with an asterisk being indicated for 80% and a double asterisk for 90%, or lowercase if we were testing with SHG -1 or 1. If we go again and look at SHG other settings, we can set it to 2, but that would only be where we've got an overheader above in our banner. So that won't be appropriate here because we've only got a / heading, which is one level of heading up. If this was all done maybe within age, so if you had overheader above this, so the ages 16 to 34 had all these rows here, all these columns here, and then they were repeated for ages 35 plus, we could, with that second level of heading, set SHG to 2, so it tested everything within the 2 age categories. But again, that's not terribly common that that's done. So that's the way that you do significance tests in MRDCL. The formulae for our significance testing are available on request in a PDF format, so please request those if you want them. But that really just shows you how to specify that in MRDCL script. And I would just once again remind you not to look at the script too closely in this particular example, because it has been computer generated and isn't necessarily the best use of MRDCL. Thank you.